na área do ambiente sabem isto como um particular destaque, as matérias dos polinizadores e da importância que a polinização e os polinizadores têm, não foram sempre matérias tratadas ao nível de outras matérias, e começamos hoje a perceber que, de facto, há uma razão para isso acontecer, e, portanto, eu não podia deixar de estar convosco. Queria dizer-vos também que não vou conseguir estar ao longo do dia. Temos alguns colegas nossos do ICNF que vão estar convosco. E isso é pena, porque eu tenho de facto um interesse particular nesta matéria, e eu diria até que temos conseguido, muito graças ao vosso trabalho, sobretudo, ao trabalho de alguns dos técnicos do Instituto, mas também, sobretudo, graças ao vosso trabalho e à importância que deram a abraçar este desafio de criar uma rede, criar, desenvolver trabalho e divulgar esse trabalho. Temos conseguido todos em conjunto, e eu acho que isso é mesmo a mensagem que eu gostava de vos deixar, a mensagem mais importante, mostrar que efetivamente há uma panóplia muito, muito diversificada de tarefas que temos todos que abraçar, e que se envolvermos todas as partes interessadas, de alguma forma conseguimos criar efetivamente aqui uma dinâmica positiva de trabalho e de awareness da sociedade civil para um assunto tão importante. Eu diria que há coisas, quer dizer, que nos ajudam aqui a perceber um bocadinho melhor a dinâmica que vamos tendo, não é? Que tem a ver agora, por exemplo, o recente livro vermelho dos invertebrados, que tem um número significativo de espécies ameaçadas em Portugal, e das quais várias são polinizadores. Mas também as questões relacionadas, por exemplo, com o sistema de monitorização, e a forma como nós temos conseguido envolver não só um conjunto de entidades do sistema científico e tecnológico e também da administração pública, mas também um conjunto de ONGs e cidadãos em particular. Isso mostra bem que este trabalho vai ao encontro de uma necessidade que é uma necessidade premente e que precisava mesmo de intervenção. Claro que, não vos vou mentir, fiquei bastante satisfeito de termos conseguido finalmente canalizar um investimento significativo para esta matéria, que era uma coisa que também nunca tinha acontecido. Não nos podemos, não é mal eu dizer isto desta forma, mas não nos podemos descansar, e portanto temos que continuar a manter na agenda
Aqui,
política
Vanessa.
que temos que continuar a manter na agenda política o tema dos polinizadores, e eu acho que não vai ser assim tão difícil, até porque a sociedade civil está efetivamente desperta para isso, e portanto vamos seguramente conseguir ter aqui resultados que mostram que a área de trabalho em que há um conjunto de pessoas que dedica o seu esforço em permanência é uma área de trabalho que precisa de estar ao nível de muitas outras que nós temos. Uma última nota para vos dizer que, no âmbito deste desafio da nova lei do restauro, e não tanto, quer dizer, é importante o facto.
Deixamos de o ouvir. Deixamos de o ouvir. Peço
Sim,
desculpa.
voltaram a ouvir-me
Agora.
agora, não?
Sim, sim.
Eu estava a dizer que há aqui, quer dizer, é importante do nosso ponto de vista perceber que a lei do restauro tem um artigo específico para os polinizadores, mas é muito mais importante nós conseguirmos, de alguma forma, perceber que este desafio do Plano Nacional de Restauro tem que assentar num conjunto de premissas, e este plano de restauro da natureza não pode, de forma nenhuma, deixar de fora os polinizadores. E, portanto, eu acho que há aqui uma matéria de trabalho futuro muito relevante e que precisa efetivamente de ter não só o conhecimento científico, mas o envolvimento das partes, o awareness, o despertar dos cidadãos, do interesse dos cidadãos. Para estas matérias, e também muita educação do ponto de vista da sociedade. Eu não resisto a partilhar convosco que nós mudámos há muito recentemente de instalações, e a primeira tendência de uma parte significativa dos próprios trabalhadores do ICNF, não de alguns, a Helena está aqui seguramente a ouvir-me, foi darem-nos nota de que era preciso limpar os canteiros e o jardim à volta e cortar as ervas. E portanto há aqui E vejam, quer dizer, isto sem nenhuma crítica, é mesmo uma diferença de uma falta de conhecimento, uma diferença de perspectiva que nós precisamos de combater. E, portanto, não me parece que nos próximos tempos este assunto vá sair da ordem do dia. Gostava muito que não saísse. E quero desejar-vos um bom dia de trabalho. Dizer que o Instituto vai manter este interesse e vai manter o envolvimento, e estaremos naturalmente disponíveis para continuar a colaborar e com a rede e a defender que, do ponto de vista do investimento, o instrumento que em Portugal investe em 2024 1,8 mil milhões de euros em matérias tão diversificadas como é o fundamental, não pode esquecer os polinizadores. E muito obrigado por me terem convidado.
Obrigada, obrigada. Muito obrigada pelas suas palavras. Eu passarei a palavra à professora Helena, por favor,
Bom, eu
diretamente
queria
da
também.
natureza.
Conseguem. Pois estou mesmo aqui numa iniciativa incrível também das NBS, portanto, eu queria cumprimentar também o Sr. Presidente do ICNF, o Dr. Nuno Banza, portanto, é também um gosto revê-lo daqui, e a todos os que estão presentes na iniciativa, mas particularmente a todos aqueles que têm construído esta rede. É claro que agradeço de modo especial à Sílvia pela proximidade e porque, de facto, à Sílvia e ao João, porque os acompanho mais de perto, mas sei que a grande importância desta rede e a sua força resulta do trabalho de todos e, portanto, a todos os investigadores que têm feito um trabalho incrível de promoção, de articulação, de consistência, de facto, de dedicação e também de muito afeto, que seguramente também faz parte deste processo. Também aos mais jovens que começam agora a ter, no fundo, este chapéu e esta oportunidade para trabalharem e fazerem o seu percurso científico. Acho realmente extraordinário, estou imensamente feliz com o trabalho que têm feito. Agradeço a oportunidade, de facto, nesta colaboração com o ICNF e também à Helena Sei, e para todos aqueles que por parte do ICNF que eu sei que acompanham há muito tempo estas matérias e, portanto, realmente temos uma oportunidade incrível também agora com a lei do restauro ecológico. Não há dúvida que a sociedade em geral está muito mais, digamos, disponível para perceber a importância desta área. Preocupa-me imenso o colapso, de facto, dos polinizadores, portanto, é evidente a situação complexa a que estamos a chegar na simplificação dos nossos sistemas ecológicos e, portanto, acho que Portugal está aqui a dar um excelente exemplo de que é possível fazer um caminho de recuperação e, portanto, nesse sentido, as minhas palavras são sobretudo de agradecimento a todos e esta disponibilidade que têm tido para construir um trabalho em rede. É o trabalho mais difícil de todos, é muito mais fácil fazermos de outra forma. É preciso, para o fazermos, é preciso uma imensa generosidade, uma capacidade de trabalho em rede, não está ao alcance de todos e por isso acho que esta rede é também nesse sentido um exemplo do melhor que tem a ciência, que é de facto a possibilidade em conjunto construirmos as soluções que são precisas para o nosso grande objetivo, que é de facto defender a natureza e fazer dela parte essencial e central também das nossas vidas, da nossa economia, do nosso futuro e por isso é isso, agradeço-vos imenso de coração, aqui um abraço grande desde Bruxelas, onde também espero que consigamos fazer das Nature-Based Solutions, de facto, uma parte muito essencial do futuro da economia. Portanto, um abraço a todos e um bom dia de trabalho. Obrigada, Sílvia.
Obrigada, muito obrigada. Obrigada pelas suas palavras também, Helena. Bem, cabe-me a mim continuar. Agradeço imenso as palavras que já foram proferidas, efetivamente, e começo por cumprimentar todos e todas as que estão presentes aqui na nossa quarta reunião da polli.NET, que na realidade celebra 3 anos de existência. Queria agradecer a vossa presença, mas também com uma nota especial, primeiro para o Sr. Presidente do Instituto da Conservação da Natureza e das Florestas e a toda a sua equipa, efetivamente, que nos tem acompanhado lado a lado naquilo que é uma jornada que iniciou há mais de 3 anos atrás. E gostava também de agradecer todo o apoio e todo o incentivo institucional que esteve sempre presente, efetivamente, da Universidade de Coimbra e, em particular, do Centro de Ecologia Funcional, na pessoa da professora Helena. Temos dado, efetivamente, como já foi mencionado, temos dado passos muito importantes no sentido de valorizar e conservar os polinizadores. Internacionalmente e mais recentemente com a aprovação da lei do restauro, que consagra, como já foi mencionado, um artigo dedicado aos polinizadores, mas também nacionalmente, ou a nível nacional, com o desenvolvimento de múltiplos projetos e de múltiplas iniciativas, que eu acho que vão ser evidentes pelo programa que temos nesta reunião, mas que extravasam o programa que aqui está, porque são muitos os membros da polli.NET que desenvolvem muitas mais atividades. E, mais recentemente, com o desenvolvimento daquilo que é o plano de ação para os polinizadores, o polinização. Não me vou alongar mais, eu creio que temos um dia completo. Daria como aberta a sessão e desejo os votos de um dia cheio de partilhas e de aprendizagem para todos e todas. Muito obrigada. Eu creio que
Obrigado,
agora
bom
na
dia a
próxima.
todos.
Obrigada, obrigada. Eu creio que me cabe a mim também fazer a apresentação do nosso palestrante convidado, o Marten Schoonman. Vou mudar para inglês para fazer a apresentação, uma vez que é um convidado externo a Portugal. Mas recordo que só esta componente da reunião é que será em inglês, depois todas as palestras a seguir serão em português. So, switching to English, I will present our invited speaker of the fourth meeting of polli.NET. We had the pleasure to meet Marten a couple of years ago when developing the theory of change to create a basis for a pollinator action plan in Portugal, together with Promote Pollinators Alliance. Marten is a senior advisor at Naturalis Biodiversity Center in Leiden, the Netherlands, and works on the interface between science and practice. Today, he will be sharing his experience in different contexts, and particularly he will share the process towards pollinator conservation in the Netherlands. So thank you, Marten, very much for accepting this invitation, and we are very happy to have you, and the floor is yours. I will just...
So my name is Marten Schoonman, and I will talk about pollinators, but especially about how to be impactful in your actions regarding pollinators. And these are experiences from the Netherlands. I work at Naturalis Biodiversity Center in a team called Biodiversity and Society. So I will talk first about the challenges regarding pollinators, especially the pressures they are under. Then I will talk about the approach that was chosen in the Netherlands and about the next steps that we are taking. This slide deck, you've probably maybe seen it already in the chat, is available through a link. And I've made it available to help you actually. So you can find the information, you can reuse the slides, and you can find links to more information. The audio is all right now, is it, Sil?
Yes, it's perfect.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you. Just checking. Yeah. All right. So the slides are available. The link is in the chat. So who am I? Well, I got interested in biology and nature already in secondary school. I studied bioprocess engineering. I became a beekeeper about 8 years ago, and I also founded a honeybee health digital platform called Beep. Alongside Beep, I started working at Naturalis Biodiversity Center in Leiden, in the Netherlands. And firstly, I focused on bees, pollinators. And of recent, I also moved to the wider story of biodiversity. And this is one of the messages in my presentation, is the link actually between pollinators and pollination services and biodiversity at large. So biodiversity in the Netherlands has been recently visualized and presented on a website called the National Dashboard on Biodiversity. Here you see the main diagram that we use, and what you see here is biodiversity in one of the corners. But biodiversity is very much dependent on whether nature has space to thrive, what the status of pressure factors is, and also more of systemic change. Things like harmful subsidies and footprint, for example. If you want to know more, please use one of these links. There's also a Portuguese version available. It's auto-translated, by the way, so it's not super reliable, but it might be useful for you. And why I show this picture is because in this context, we are talking about bees and pollinators in general. And they're under a great deal of pressure too. They are part of biodiversity, as we all are. And this is one of the papers that described, and I like the visual, the picture, the types of pressures that pollinators are under. Things like pesticide use, environmental pressures, habitat loss, fragmentation in the landscape, urbanization. I think we are all quite familiar with these problems. But also pests, also diseases, also climate change. Right, so you already see an overlap between what is problematic for pollinators specifically, but also problematic for biodiversity at large. And these papers are very useful in terms of, well, gaining insights, what's going on, what are the things we can work on, the activities that we can do to improve the situation. But we also need to be aware that there are things that we don't know, and there are even things that we don't know that we don't know. It sounds a bit funny, perhaps, but it is important to also look at the knowledge gaps, what is actually we feel essential to know to take care of pollinators the best way that we can. And a nice example regarding knowledge on pollinators, I think, is a recent app and article as well by my colleague Leon Marshall and other authors regarding knowledge on bees. So how much knowledge do we know we lack? How much do we have and how much do we lack in terms of species occurring in certain places regarding observations? So you can imagine this looks like a simple map with some colors, but there's a huge amount of data from literature and databases behind to show across Europe, including Portugal and the provinces within Portugal, what's the state of the knowledge is, to better know what we don't know, basically, so we can focus on filling those knowledge gaps. And one of the ways to do that is by sharing knowledge on a European level. And you see here the so-called Pollinator Academy. It's quite new. You can use it for increasing your taxonomic knowledge or to interest others to get better at knowing bees, recognizing bees. We hope to further fill this together with partners in Europe the coming years. And it is part of the Spring project. I'm not going to go into detail there, but it is about pollinator monitoring on a European level. And I think polli.NET is also involved in, or was involved in the Spring project and is involved in pollinator monitoring. All right, enough said. I think in general, things about pollinators and pressures, I think it's good to now focus on the situation in the Netherlands. So what have we done and what have we learned? So in 2018, the Dutch bee strategy was formulated. And I say bee, but we mean here pollinators at large. And one of the things that it coincided with, that happened at the same time, was big news about bee loss. But this was actually specific about honeybee colonies. So that news alone got people very worried, but it confused them actually a little bit, right? So there was news about honeybee colony loss, but they confused it with pollinators in general. And this, I think, is due to also the sort of publicly lack of knowledge regarding all the species of bees and pollinators that are out there, not just honeybees. But anyway, it coincided, and a pollinator strategy was formulated, and this was done, I think, very, very, very precise, very strategic. And there was also an ambition formulated. So in 2030, pollinators and pollination will be sustainably preserved in 2030. That was like the main statement and ambition to work towards in this strategy, which sounds very useful, which is great. All right, so what's logic? What people do is get to work and work together. So you see here some pictures of what is happening in the country regarding flower fields, regarding beekeeping, regarding meetings and knowledge exchange, regarding education for children as well, flowery meadows with cows, etc. So we want action, we want to do something. So this started in 2019, and lots of people signed to the strategy to say this is important and started projects. Important here to mention is that in the Netherlands, this was not a funding scheme. And so it was a movement, a campaign to get people linked up, to get them, to make them aware this is important. We're working towards this goal together, but not providing further structural funding. And so it's not it's an overall societal strategy, but it's not a program. And this was also the year that the big insect loss, or the insect apocalypse, as it was also mentioned by some media from data, especially from Western Germany, regarding loss of insects, and especially loss of biomass, populations of insects over the last few decades. So very big news, a big eye-opener, and of course very much related to pollinators as well as biodiversity, in broader terms. And this further strengthened, of course, actions in the country. You see here a map of the municipalities of the Netherlands, and a color code. So the darker it is, the more initiatives are undertaken. So which is great, and it's updated all the time, and of course it's filled more and more. But an important question was also asked. So the question was asked: what is the relationship between all of these activities and this main goal, this huge goal on the post-it? And Naturalis investigated whether all of these activities added up will actually make it possible to achieve this goal. And the answer was no. This is extremely unlikely. And the reason for that is that many of the projects were focused on awareness, on education, adding knowledge, but not so much, or only very local, small scale, on actually doing things, taking measures. So something like ecological green maintenance, the mowing regime, for example, on a nature inclusive and nature friendly way, on very large surfaces of the country, can have a very big impact. Not enough was happening there. So this was a pretty big question mark in terms of, so what does that mean? What do we do as a country about this? So one of the things to do is to focus on, are we doing the right actions? Do we need to do more actions, or make them smarter? Well, yes, both. And what about who's involved? Who signed up and undersigned the strategy, and who didn't? Are there more partners that could be involved? Let's analyze it. Probably more people can be involved. And what are actually the challenges and the solutions to achieve this goal? So the conclusion was, we need to look into this. We need to analyze this. And looking at the goal, it's a pretty wicked challenge, as they say. It's a wicked problem. It's so large. There's so many aspects involved, let alone things like climate change and these pressures regarding environmental conditions like pesticides, herbicides, insecticides, and so on. It's a huge challenge. And we need to look at what's in our control in terms of the partners and the actors, and what is not directly in our control, but what we might be able to influence, to convince some people, to set something in motion. And what basically the big question is, so how can these actions achieve that big goal? I find the management guru, he has passed, but the management guru Stephen Covey very inspirational. And one of the things he said is, begin with the end in mind. And in this case, it basically means to focus actually not so much on the actions, but actually start focusing on the goal and what that means, what that goal actually means. And a method to do that is called theory of change. So we have applied the theory of change methodology. It is designed for complex situations with many partners and societal partners involved, doing things, believing things, trying to work together, but at the same time having a huge challenge. And the theory of change has been applied successfully, I would say, for the Dutch pollinator strategy to bridge this gap. And so bridge the gap between the actions on the left-hand side and the big goal on the right-hand side. And this is done through outcomes, as you see here in the post-its in the middle. And the outcomes on the right-hand side, maybe you can see my pointer, the outcomes on the right-hand side, we call the main outcomes. And those are actually the most important ones in terms of answering the question, what do pollinators need? And so we often focus on our activities, and that's what we're good at, etc. What we sometimes forget is, what do the pollinators need? So this is where our scientific knowledge and our experience can come in to say what pollinators need throughout the countries, what the biggest pressures are in certain regions of the countries, and what can be done about that. But maybe we also face some knowledge gaps, so then we can put that on our research agenda. So that's an important question to answer. And then working from there, we can go more towards the left and say, so which main outcomes or which main results do we need to focus on with our activities to actually make an impact on those outcomes? And those outcomes in turn help to achieve the main goal. So that's why the arrows are shown between actions on the left-hand side, achieving main results, key results, achieving outcomes beneficial to the pollinators, and that helps to achieve our goal that we work towards together. What does this look like in practice? Just before the Corona period in the Netherlands, we embarked on a series of workshops. So you see here on the left-hand side, for example, the actor analysis. We are writing down names of actors, any actors, not just partners in the campaign, but any actor that we believe can play a role, can have an impact, and then analyze a stakeholder analysis from there. We did the same for factors, so things that are barriers, that are risks, but also solutions, to basically have a brainstormed list of all the things that could be part of outcomes. And on the right-hand side, you see also my colleague, Professor Koos Biesmeijer, presenting one of the pathways, because I already showed there are arrows between these boxes, but what do we believe is true? What do we know is true? If we do this, it will lead to that. Are we actually sure whether that happens and whether that is impactful or not? So you see here an exchange in our thinking. And this also relates to who is invited. So also for Portugal, in the Theory of Change workshops, a wide range of parties was involved and invited to participate to put this together. So this was also done in collaboration with Promote Pollinators. I've not mentioned that yet, but Promote Pollinators is one of the logos in the footer. And Promote Pollinators is a network where countries can become a member who are working on pollinators, and they can exchange their experiences, their knowledge. And Promote Pollinators made it possible to work on these theory of change strategies for various countries. So you see here 2 countries where this was also done, and also in Portugal. So here's a screenshot of the people that are shown on the website on polli.NET. On the theory of change. I added the link as well if you don't have it already. And what you see here on the right-hand side is actually the making of the theory of change. So there are lots of post-its, including a brainstorm on the main impact statement, the actors, the factors. So that's all on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, you can see all those arrows moving about, basically people thinking about what activity are we doing and how does that relate to what pollinators need? What are the steps? Where are we at? What do we know for sure? And some of the things I mentioned already, just doing that thinking process, basically figuring that out. It's quite a puzzle. Next slide. Right. So what it achieves in the end is a diagram. It's a pretty large diagram. On the left-hand side, you see the Dutch theory of change for pollinators. And you see, well, it's color-coded. We used the IPBES color coding for types of activities. So what is related to awareness raising, what is related to green measures, what is related to agriculture, you name it. And you also see some circles. It's not so clear in this example, but you see some circles. So basically, by building the structure with all the connections and the logic links, we then distilled the main themes, the main subjects. These are the circles here. I will show them in a minute on another slide. And on the right-hand side, you see the full diagram for the theory of change for Portugal. And you can find it on the website to study it further. And the main use of this diagram for the Netherlands is to use it as a reference, to basically go and see where is my activity in this diagram and what does it logically lead to in the next step towards this main goal. And can I work on that? And actually, can I do that alone or not? Who could I partner with? Who can I provide my knowledge to? How can I upscale my initiative? Whatever is appropriate towards the right. So it can be used as giving direction in terms of taking things further and making them more impactful. I'd like to show you a specific example to give you a little bit of clarity what that means in the case of the Netherlands. So here is one flow from an activity on the very left-hand side of the diagram towards the main goal on the right hand. And this is about knowledge. So you see here an activity to identify knowledge gaps. And for every post-it, it's important to also mention the actor or the actors to make it specific. So knowledge institutes identify knowledge gaps. So when they do, this allows them to perform research on these knowledge gaps. Of course, funding provided, time provided, and things like that. There are some dependencies, of course, but this is you could say this is a logic flow. This is a logic step. And then that means that knowledge institutes have the knowledge available, and it will not have impact if it does not reach other audiences to do things with this knowledge, right? So that's an extremely important aspect of the theory of change. So in this case, it means that this knowledge needs to be available to various actors involved in education, green measures, so actually taking action and doing things in a more pollinator-friendly way, as well as in the agricultural sector. So when that happens, when these measures are taken, these can benefit through various steps, through various flows in the logic to pollinators having better circumstances. And this relates to food and nesting sites mainly. So and that directly has impact on the main impact statement. So this to take you through one of these flows. And what I hope also is that this approach helps you to think about your activities in terms of how can my activities make impact from the point of the view of what pollinators need and who are my potential partners. One of the big lessons for the Netherlands was that collaboration was a key success factor to achieve or to move towards this impact statement. Now, this diagram is pretty large and it's complex, and maybe it even frightens some people. It's too much detail. So one of the solutions for that is to make a summarized version or even a drawing or some sort of visualization. So for the Netherlands, we chose for the image you see here on the left. It still has this flow using the lines. There are some bees flying about, but it still works to show the logic from left to right according to the main themes. Those circles that I showed earlier. And in the case of Portugal, there's also, for example, the flyer to explain what sort of the main conclusions are from the theory of change exercise. But I think Sil and João can explain that much better than I can. All right, so then I want to move on to what are the potential uses of such an exercise, and what does that mean for the Netherlands? What have we done, or what are we doing? So firstly, the theory of change can be used for planning, for making plans, project plans. And one that is, I think, specifically interesting is making plans to improve knowledge, to extend knowledge on pollinators. Which measures are useful to do? Which pollinators exist in the Netherlands, and what do we know about them? What do they need? Things like that. And to inform that, Wageningen University and Naturalis investigated the knowledge status regarding pollinators in the Netherlands. And you see a diagram here, a graph on the right-hand side with the cumulative number of knowledge products regarding pollinators. And you see it has increased a lot over this period, let's say 2015 2015 to 2021, but it's also moving towards a peak. It's not increasing so much anymore in 21-22. We're reaching a peak, and we also asked if people that need knowledge can actually find it, we basically found a mismatch in the accessibility of the knowledge. And so the knowledge there's enough knowledge available, but the actors that need the knowledge cannot always find it. And this was for the Netherlands especially true for the agricultural sector. So people from the agricultural sector that we spoke to said, yes, we want to use this knowledge, we need it, but we can't readily find it. So we made an improvement. You see another picture here, a screenshot from a website called, it's difficult to translate literally, but it's a website with all the 300 plus knowledge products for the Netherlands in a phone book with a decision tree. So the user gets a bunch of questions. Do you want to know more about which pollinators are there in the Netherlands? What can you do for pollinators? And then from there you get a different question and you're pointed to those resources. So this was basically a way to share this whole knowledge resource. There's a link provided with an automatically translated version if you want to check it. So then I mentioned already, collaboration was a key conclusion from this theory of change exercise. And one of the initiatives started quite a number of years ago already is called bee landscapes. So you see here people getting together. In this case, they're building a nesting site for ground nesting bees. Most of the bee species in the Netherlands, at least, nest in the ground, in the soil, and getting together to make plants. And one of the ways to do that is the picture below, is the so-called bed and breakfast methodology developed by Wageningen University, to basically do an analysis from the landscape to see where is the habitat suitable for pollinators already, where are these patches, where are these locations, and having some rules regarding maximum distance between those locations to make a favorable landscape for pollinators to move around, to exchange genes, to keep the genetic pool healthy, to survive basically, to survive and thrive. And there's also a methodology called eco profiles. It's a bit much information, but it basically means to sort of summarize various species of bees, various types of habitats, and make sort of a generic statement about what needs to be improved throughout the country. And on the right-hand side, you see where these bee landscapes have been implemented or are being implemented. So in quite a number of municipalities, this is taking place. And it's around a specific area. So it gets very specific of actors wanting to do something, getting to know what bees actually are and how important they are, caring about it, and then taking action together. And what I particularly like is the mix of people. It's really a mix of governmental bodies, beekeepers, or even beekeeper biodiversity ambassadors. That's a program we have in the Netherlands as well. Companies, schools, golf terrains, you name it. And on the right-hand side here, you see a resource. It's available in English and some other languages to actually help you to set up such a bee landscape. Where do I start? What are the steps I can take? And it's called the Bee Landscape Roadmap. So for communication, the National Bee Strategy for the Netherlands also implemented a new website. And the theory of change, especially the main themes, became a communication structure in this new website. Basically informing people what is being done, but also what can be done and what the main sort of subjects are. So you see here some examples of the main themes. Knowledge is there, attention for endangered species, education and awareness. Well, one of the points here is education and awareness will not help the pollinators, but only by making use and applying the knowledge in practical terms, that's where pollinators will notice and benefit. So for communication, it is also used. Then I mentioned earlier that the strategy in the Netherlands is not a program. There's no funding scheme and project or sub-projects, but it's more about giving focus and connecting people and making things happen. And therefore, there's no monitoring plan, but we chose to basically turn it around, and we used a methodology called outcome harvesting. It basically means that with a wide range of actors, we sat down in 2 workshops and we wrote down what is currently happening, which results are being achieved, or what is changing, both positive and negative. And we found 75 results, and this is a big yield. 75 things that recently changed, and I think this was for like 95% positive changes that we found, and only a few like negative ones, and negative for pollinators. And those results we mapped on the theory of change diagram, so we could easily see where are things changing, where are things happening, and where are things and where are things lacking behind, you could say, or things are not happening. There's no movement there, there's no energy there. Maybe it's about money as well. So that can also then, or could inform us where some additional action was required. And we did indeed draw conclusions that more action was required on communication in terms of involving more actors in certain areas, especially also in the agricultural sector. This was part of an evaluation that has been finalized, and the policy brief is being finalized at the moment to also provide government with insights in terms of where additional action and attention is required. Then lastly, monitoring of pollinators themselves is extremely important to be able to say something about the actual impact. So in the coming years, what are the figures showing regarding achieving this goal in 2030? And the goal, as it is here on the post-it, is not very smart. It is not specific. There's no specific figures, but in the strategy, figures were included, and there was a measurement done in 2018 regarding the state of pollinators, not just species richness, of course, but also populations and health of populations. So we also find that this is there are 360 species in the Netherlands at the moment, and yeah, it's an extremely large job regarding doing such an analysis. So basically, the message here that more observations are required and more observers are required, and this relates also to taxonomic knowledge, being able to identify bees. One of the things that has been quite successful is the so-called national bee count. So in spring, when not too many species are active, which could make it very complex, Naturalis organizes a national bee count where basically everyone is asked to get involved in counting the bees and identifying the numbers, or we tally the numbers, and at least we get the general impression. The map I show here is for one specific species, and you see here that it's observed in only the south of the Netherlands. So there is already a lot of data, but basically we're saying it's not enough yet to be able to make this measurement regarding this impact statement smart. So that is still a task that we're working on. I'd like to wrap up with some take-home messages. So one of the key messages in this whole process that the Netherlands went through and that we're making use of is to start with the end in mind, to start with what do we jointly...
Begin with the end in mind.
What do we jointly see as or feel even where we want to work towards together? So this is also what in Portugal has been discussed and been concluded upon what this main vision is. And when you do so, it's important to, we have the Football European Cup, and what they say is keep your eye on the ball. And in this case, I would like to say keep your eye on the bee. And what I mean by that is to think from the perspective of what pollinators need. So not just the awareness campaign and how you will perform that and who you will achieve, but actually to see how will this in the end benefit the pollinators. Can you see that flow can you maybe optimize your activity and your program to achieve impact from the bee or the pollinator point of view? And so focus on the end result actually as well. And then lastly, I think pollinators are part of biodiversity. The challenge of biodiversity, the biodiversity crisis, is very large, and I see pollinators as being a bridge, forming a bridge as well towards the larger challenge of biodiversity. So there is a link. There's a link, and how that you can actually exactly use that. That really depends on your activity, what you're doing, who you are talking to. But I do believe it can be helpful to keep that also in mind. It could also work the other way if people are working on biodiversity, to see how can bees and pollination services make that more visible. People tend to understand that, they're interested in the subject to know more, and they tend to quickly also care about it. Much easier than things like water filtration, for example, or oxygen production, other ecosystem services. So it can also be a solution in our collective understanding of what biodiversity is and why we should take care of it. All right, thank you for your attention. I think there's a little space for a short space for some questions, perhaps. I do also have another meeting coming up, but I think it would be great to have a question. And my email address is also here in case you want to get in touch. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Marten, for this inspiring talk, and showing not only the interconnection of everything and everyone, but also showing that we can progress step by step in different fronts, right? So yes, we've opened the space for a couple of questions. If someone would like to, please. You can also use the chat, and I can pose the question if you prefer. Don't feel shy.
Yeah, I think people can also post a question in the chat in Portuguese.
Yes,
Sil?
Yes. One of the first comments we have, sorry, let me see. The first is from Robin Payne. Can Marten say more about the volume of data collected so far over time in the monitoring effort?
So what I can say is that more and more data is collected because more and more people got interested in the subject, and technology also advances. So one of the things happening in the Netherlands is automatic image recognition. There's an application that is becoming more and more popular, where people can take a photo of a pollinator, and especially a pollinator on a flower is very useful information. The image can be automatically recognized, so the user gains some knowledge, but the observation is also stored in the database. And the number of observations per day is increasing every day. And this is not expert monitoring, but it is citizen monitoring, citizen science. But because the photo is the proof, and the app is built in such a way that timestamps and the GPS location is stored, it means these are valuable observations. So I think this is an extremely successful approach to make it easier for people to get involved, for them to gain knowledge, to be active. And sometimes this can also be part of what they sometimes call a bio blitz. So identifying the biodiversity in a certain region, including pollinators, using apps like this. So my general answer is, like, the volume is increasing through a mix of different methods, which of course the experts are still required to validate, but also the wider public can get involved. And I think that's also an important factor.
Yeah, it's a mixture. It's being an approach through Europe. So we are actually building the European monitoring pollinator monitoring scheme. But in the meantime, there are tools for citizen science to contribute, citizens to contribute to storing information. Yes. So we have another comment from Maria Carmo, which it's a problem that is emerging in Portugal, and I don't know how parallel this could be in other places, but we have increased areas of solar panels because we need to turn green. And management of farming, but this farming is actually for cattle. It's not farming, it's like extensive areas for cattle in our southern part, in Alentejo, southern part of Portugal, which is a big problem, can be a big problem for pollinators, and I imagine it's not yet its impact is not yet assessed. So I think it's posed in the question, but indeed we need to do studies to evaluate this impact. Sorry, this okay. So from Paula Lopes da Silva, could you write the name of the app that you mentioned to monitor pollinators using citizen science in the Netherlands, please?
I'm looking for it now. I see if I can find the link
there
for
was
you.
Another comment from Robin Payne, but I don't see it now, so I don't know what happened. So thank you very much for sharing. I don't know if someone else would like to. We here in Portugal, I think we suffer from the same confusion that you faced at the beginning, like using the term bee. It gets people confused, and here it's usually more, the scope is much more reduced. So when you say bee, they automatically, the common citizen thinks on honeybees, which is a problem to value the other 740 species.
Wow.
So,
it's I also believe it's a problem because honeybees are managed. So as beekeepers, I'm a beekeeper myself as well. So as beekeepers, we take care of them. We can solve situations as good as we can. But yeah, for wild bees, the situation is completely different. And research also shows that they're extremely important. So for pollination, so I think it requires how do you say, awareness creation to also inform the public of what is out there, to say which other pollinators exist and how beautiful they are. The photos in my presentation are part of a campaign to show the beauty and the diversity of the Dutch wild bees. So all the bees in my presentation are Dutch bees from the collection of the Naturalis Biodiversity Center. There's a link there also to a photo set of more than 5,000 photos of bee species around the world. Steve Droege is the photographer, an American naturalist and biologist. And so that is a way, of course, to show it to people. And my belief, my understanding is also that the media plays a very large role in this. So when there's news about bees, it is extremely helpful if journalists have the knowledge to explain in an additional sentence. Well, this is about wild bees, and this is about honeybees, and this is the difference between the two, to make that clear.
Okay, thank you very much. So I don't know if we are getting close to our time, but maybe there is a very interesting question, and I think there are literature starting to build on this, that do you believe that there is a limit to the number of managed bees the wild pollinator communities can survive alongside?
That is a very big question. Very difficult to answer. What I believe, well, what I observe is that it is a big discussion and that it is very hard to quantify. And people also get angry about it and worried. And what I believe is helpful, having the lack of exact understanding what happens at a certain place on a certain day under specific variables like weather, because we don't know exactly. I think it's helpful to, as beekeepers and as beekeepers associations, to how do you say, to think about the environment at large. So to see what is possible, what can be measured. For example, can the honeybees find food resources? If they have difficulty to find nectar, for example, then the wild bees are very likely to be under pressure as well. And then what does the beekeeper do? So I think that those are important questions to sort of see what can it mean in practice. And the research is ongoing in terms of competition over food and what we can say, but it will be very difficult to be very exact on that.
Yes, it's a balance that we need to establish. Yeah.
I'd like to wish you a great meeting today. I understand you will continue in Portuguese.
Yes.
Not my first language, not my second either. But and I'm very grateful for your invitation and for being part of the process of creating the theory of change. And you know where to find me in case you think I can be of any help. And wish you all a great day.
Thank you very much, Marten. It was a pleasure to hear you and to have you with us. Thank you for everything.